Hi, welcome to A.D.K Rock and Metal Network. My name is Kirk Horton, and this is episode 8 of Tales from the Underground. And we're joined by a legend, English death metal band, Cancer. Most of you should know who they are. And we've got John Walker, singer, songwriter, original member, guitarist, who's joining us. And we're going to be talking about the new album, Inverted World, which came out on the 25th of April, 2025. And I am going to ask some questions about the 1995 album, 30 years old this year, called Black Fate. So, John, before we get into it, you're in Madrid at the moment. What have you been up to
Yes.
today?
It's about 30 something degrees. So I've been trying to keep cool and doing what I do, play a bit of guitar and, that type of the family life.
Yeah,
There's not much happening here at the moment, so.
there is later in the year. I've seen you've got tours booked, you and Pestilence out in Spain and then Latin America, are you, towards the end of the year?
Yeah, it's in September, isn't it? It's
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, we're going over there with Pestilence. It's been a long time. I know Patrick from 30 years ago. We did a tour of the UK with them with Atheist. Was it Atheist? No, it was Malevolent Creation, Pestilence, and Cancer. Yeah, at the
Real
time.
first generation death metal, even that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Can I want to start the interview. I don't know the background to the radical lineup change. So why is Cole Stokes, the original drummer, and Ian Buchanan, the bass player, original bass player, why are they not part of the lineup of the new album?
Okay, so it's a bit of a backstory with this. It's going to take some time of explaining, but what happened was before we did the Shadow Gripped album, which was the last one, we had our first three albums re-released by Cyclone Empire, which was a small German label, and we thought, well, we'll get together and play a few festivals. That was the idea, just to make a bit of beer money, have a laugh, play the old songs for a bit of a laugh. We'd all kind of like moved on, if you know what I mean. But within a few months, we were playing, every month, at times, and we started playing a bit more. And then Peaceville, we got a deal with Peaceville, and they wanted us to do an album. So all of a sudden, the game had changed from being a bit of fun. But the idea was just to play a few festivals. But anyway, we carried on. We did the album, and then Peaceville released the first three albums again. So we did quite a lot of time together, considering we were just coming back together just to play a few festivals. We actually spent quite a lot of time together. And then the COVID thing happened, the coronavirus and the lockdowns and the banning of, there was no concerts, there was nothing. And, I think they'd moved on, and, if there was a time for them to stop doing it, it was, after the COVID thing, it was like, that's when they said. So they actually gave me a good notification. And, I still speak with Ian. We've got good friends. I've known him since I was 13. But it was going to be difficult for them to continue. And I wanted to keep writing and keep doing it. I said, do you mind if I continue doing the band? They said, yeah. So I continued doing it. But because I live in Madrid, I knew the bass player already, and he kind of contacted the drummer from another Spanish band called Wormed. And we got together as a three-piece and just started jamming again. But back to the COVID thing, it was the COVID pandemic and the quarantine and the ultra-long contemplation. Too much contemplation, being locked down in the house and all that eventually sparked me writing again. And I do a lot of writing anyway, but I didn't want to write quite the same as what I did on Shadow Gripped. I wanted to move it on anyway and try and do something slightly different. And so it just worked out from that, really. But I just continued doing it because I got nothing else to do.
So the good news is, one, Ian and Carl give you the blessing to continue the band. There's no egregious departure, no lawsuits, anything. It's just, like you say, COVID. They're in England, you're in Spain. You realize when you got back together in 2016, 17, actually, I want to start writing. Shadow Grip comes out, and you've got that momentum again. So, yeah, so that's good to know. That probably explains why there's nothing in the press release about where those two are in the band, because there's no story there, is it? It's just friends moving on.
Exactly. It's exactly that. You know, it's you can't be childish with this type of thing. You know, every band, you know, goes through a lot of rites of passage. You know, there's good and bad experiences, but you know, they're still still my mates. You know, so you know, I prefer it. You know, it's a better, you know, to keep it in that way. You don't want animosity and regret hold you back.
Yeah, like you say, you've known Ian since age 13 as well, haven't you? So
yeah.
Good that you're still friends. Just out of interest, did you move to Spain 2 decades ago?
Yeah, I came here 20 years. In October was when I moved here, 20 years. So it'll be 20 years in October, yeah. And yeah, I've been living in Madrid. I quite like being a foreigner. You know, I like being a foreigner. I like, you know, because I'm kept out of things. I can look at things from a slightly different perspective. So I feel slightly privileged in that way, you know. And so I kind of, you know, the streets of Madrid, the old streets of Madrid, you know, quite brings out the romantic side of me a bit, you know. But it's nice to live in a slightly different culture and to see it, and then look at my own culture and see the things that they see about our culture, you know. Yeah. So it's a revelation, you know. It's enlightening. So I would say
one of the great cities of Western civilization as well. What I wanted to ask, you know, because the band is now in Spain, and the three members. So, like you said, you already knew the bassist. That's Daniel Maganto. The drummer, I do know that band. Worm. So, Gabriel Falcafar, is that the guy who's your drummer?
Yeah, Falcafar. He lives in Logroño, where they do this Rioja wine.
Oh, nice! I like.
Yeah, he's a gladiator. He gets changed before he plays. He's like gladiator, wear the Eugene Sandow sandals, the Roman sandals. He should, you know. I keep telling him. But yeah, big fella, you know. But yeah, where the wine is, you know, flows with the kisses of angels. It's wonderful. It really
is good. Yeah.
Yes.
Who's the lead guitar player then? Robert Navajas. Where do you know him from? Which bands has he been in?
Actually, I know him from my son. You know, he was jamming with my son. He's done some stuff. I don't really know his background, to be honest, but I got him in because he's, you know, we both love AC/DC and that type of music. And I didn't want to be playing my leads on it again, like I did on Shadow Gripped. And I thought I wanted somebody with a bit of something in the fingers a bit more, you know, and, you know, a bit more quirkiness in the sound. And I didn't want to I can do kind of thought out melodies, and I can do the cat strangling leads on to the gory end, but I wanted somebody else to do him, and he was around, and I got him in to do it, and then I took him to China. Yeah, you could see the regret in his face when he realised what he was dealing with. You know, it was fantastic.
I like the idea that your son's jamming with him, and he's like, "Oh, my dad used to be in a death metal band," and he's like, "Hang on, he's got a Wikipedia page. They were signed to a major." But that's probably a good thing. Did he know about cancer before you scouted him, or just thought, "Hang on, I could use you"?
To be honest, I've never spoken to him about it. You know, Just so because he comes in, we play guitar together. We actually started jamming. Okay, before I give him the job, so we were actually jamming, and he's got a lot of style in his fingers, and he can do stuff that I've got no chance of doing. So he's a good complement with me playing the rhythms, because I do the rhythms, all the rhythm guitars. He played the leads on the album. I think he did a really nice job. It's like a guitar team.
Yeah.
So he's obsessed with equipment.
He's a gearhead.
Yeah, he's obsessed with equipment, and he talks about the different equipment and stuff like that. So he'd make a brilliant one of these reviewers on the online reviews. That's his thing, I think. But
yeah,
he can shred, so he's a good lad.
Clearly done a good job. Do you know the writing for this album? Were there any songs left over from Shadow Gripped, or any that you've had in your repertoire for like the last 30 years that you thought, go on, I'm going to put them on here now?
No. I scrap every time I do. When I write stuff, I scrap everything that's left over. So with the Shadow Gripped, there was actually 12 songs. But 2 of them got put out on the Ball Cutter EP.
Yeah.
So it was that type of thing. With this album, I'd written... I think I'd written another 5 or 6 songs, but I didn't even bother recording them. They were like My Lovely Horse, Cancer Stars. I'm not putting that out. So I didn't want to do anything where I had a slight doubt about what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? So it was like, I wanted to be sure myself. I don't really know. How people are going to take an album, or how they're going to receive an album, or what they're going to say. And really, I'm not too bothered about that. What I'm bothered about is if it does it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm actually super happy with the Inverted World album. Because as a songwriter, I think the song's quite together, and there's no long instrumental bits, or it's just that old school death metal songs, with a bit of a song structure,
Yeah, let's get into it then, because I'll pick out some of the songs that stood out for me on Inverted World. And I want to start with track number 2, Until the Died.
Yeah.
And these are the notes that I put. So you tease the opening riff with like a start-stop puzzle, and you threaten to accelerate into blast beats. But the main verse could be from that controversial industrial metal experiment, Black Faith to Love. And I can see why one of your band members is wearing a Godflesh t-shirt, in the promo.
Yeah.
But the question I want to ask after, because what I said about this is how you achieve an equilibrium between Celtic Frost and Prong. So I was going to say, how long have you had this riff or this song in your repertoire? But are you saying this was new to this album writing session?
Yeah, I've got a little dictaphone. Do you remember the dictaphones that journalists had? I've got a digital one. I've got it in like my Boss tuner pedal box, kind of like put against my little tiny Marshall practice amp. And I keep playing until I've got the riffs together and I've got a set of riffs. If I don't get it, if I don't get more, 3 or 4 riffs, 5 riffs, and I get a song idea around it, fabulous. If by the end of the day I've just got 1 riff, but I can't do anything with it, I'll scrap it. Right. So it's a bit AC/DC again with that, It's just, you got to do it every day. And I don't like to labour with, old ideas, or even ideas. If it's not working, it's not working. I'll just scrap it. Sometimes it's a bit of a leveler. You take a song idea to the rehearsal room and it might not work, and it's like, oh, you try and make it work. You think, no, just go back to the blank page and try again, and try and keep it fresh that way. So, but Until They Died, yeah, it's about a war crime atrocities that seem to be going on today.
It's pertinent, isn't it? Yeah. Because with that, I was going to ask, do you know on this album, does every song start with you ideas on guitar? Or do you occasionally just have a drum beat in your head or even a distorted bass riff? Have you ever approached songwriting from that perspective?
I asked the bass player, Dr. Maganato, to put his bass to start the Corrosive because I needed a quirk in the album. I needed a nuance, it's slightly different nuance to start the song. And I got him to do that, and it's nice, isn't it? It's got that old 80s grindcore death metal bass.
Definitely.
With the almost tongue-in-cheek lyrics, because I wanted to finish the album with a bit more of a comedy, to all the other stuff that's horror.
I have made a note of that. Yeah, track 10, Corrosive.
Mm.
And this is when I listened to it the first time, I wrote down, this feels like the easiest song that they wrote and recorded for the album. You wonder if it was the first track composed during the pre-production phase. But then I learned it's actually resurrecting the tale of a protagonist from previous albums, the acid bath murderer, tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I don't know where all that comes. I don't know where all that comes from. I mean, we don't want to be
gaslighted. It comes from.
Yeah, I mean, what it is like the first album to the gory end had the song "Into the Acid," and it alludes to the idea of the part in RoboCop, the film RoboCop, the original one, where the guy with the lamb chops and the skinhead and the gun, he ends up in the acid like barrel, doesn't he? And he comes out all melted and that. So it's about that. But this song, Corrosive, it's actually about the acid bath murderer, who used to, basically swindle money out of his clients and then dispose of them. And it's actually like the opposite of like Shadow Gripped, because the song on Shadow Gripped, Disposer, is about a serial killer who couldn't properly get rid of the corpses, and it eventually, the smell alerted the authorities. But this guy, he was more efficient. Get him in the acid bath, and just got to get rid of the liquid, and
Great song. and it ends the album as well. Yeah. One that does stand out for me, track number 5, Test Site. And I put here, John Walker has not lost his Midlands-oriented Shropshire accent on the evidence of the song, which is good. I think you can hear that come through. Very English. And it's easy to follow like a story. It even starts, isn't it? July 1945, 5:29 a.m., out in White Sands, New Mexico, counting down to 0. So you're talking about the first successful detonation of a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? That was actually it wasn't written after Oppenheimer. Okay, so I didn't rip off Cillian Murphy or whatever his name is, and the Nolan fella. I saw it was actually. Do you remember the newest series of Twin Peaks? It was.
I know when it came out, when they resurrected it. I didn't watch any of it.
It was the David Lynch. It was Twin Peaks. That was the last season that came out like 20 years or whatever year later. And the band 9 Inch Nails play in the bar, and then after that, it goes to the detonation, the actual film of the detonation with it, the choreographed. And I actually got it. I got influence actually from that, because they play this kind of like Oriental Japanese. Classical abstract music at the same time. It's like horrifying.
Yeah,
and it's like it's a shudder. Now I was born, a long time ago, and I had to, live through the Cold War, and the fact that when you find out at a very early age that they've got weapons that pointed at you, not just we have those weapons, but actually pointed at us. I was like, what? I'm on the I'm on the wrong fucking planet, obviously. What's all this bollocks, So the Cold War played on my psyche all along, And the first album, again, you got Imminent Catastrophe, which is actually about that, having to live with that type of threat, and it's amazing, isn't it?
Did you used to? I bet you enjoyed that TV series. Was it called Threads? Early
Oh,
80s. That was terrifying, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, I cried when I saw When the Wind Blows.
Oh yeah, that is. I know it
It's
still gets me
horrible.
now. That
Yeah, it's horrible.
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Ridiculous. And Boys with Toys and all that.
But what I like about that song, though, it is a story. I remember
Yeah,
listening to it and thinking, first of all, your vocal enunciation is superb for a death metal band. I can hear every word in that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to research the date. And it came up. I was like, oh, how easy is that to follow? And I said, I think with this song, where it stands out, it's like cancer is the thread that links death metal and Killing Joke. That's what it sounds like to me. And I know you've done that in the past.
yeah.
What are your observations on that?
Well, that's probably the best ever compliment I've ever had.
Oh,
Black Faith. We got Cybersank because he did the exorcism in the Millennium,
yeah,
off the Pandemonium album.
yeah.
So we drafted him in for that because we had the Labour major label money. I was sounding like David Lammy then. Oh God, and we got him in. I'm big Killing Joke man, from back in the day. So it's probably the closest observation that I've had in about this in my 30 years. So well done.
It comes through, but you were doing that in 1995 as well, though. To be fair, on Black Faith, which we're going to talk about later on. The final song on the album that I want to talk about, track number 9, Jesus for Eugenics. Very dystopian heavy metal affair, really, isn't it? I think it's got like clean minor chords and then higher dynamics. Then it really goes in at full velocity. And again, I think I put musically a conductor would die of torment if asked to gesture with a baton.
Yeah. Again, you picked another song where musically the structure doesn't repeat. It only repeats from the previous thing, and then it goes into something else, and then goes into something else again. So Test Site again does that. It finishes completely different to the way it started. Where you take a song like Amputate, the opening riff finishes the song. So with Jesus for Eugenics, that was one of the more difficult songs to write on the album, where I had to go away from the rehearsal room and think about it and go, what can we do? How can we do this? And eventually, it worked, but it was probably the most difficult one to write. The investigation into what happens in when social engineers and criminal governments get together and decide who's worthy of life and who isn't. And eugenics was it was a popular movement. What I know about it,
Progressive as well at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of people now talk about transhumanism as well, because it has that similar thing where through technology enter the gates. Through that, eventually they're gonna know what your thoughts are, what your opinion is, what use you are on the planet, how much tax you pay. All this is going to come in eventually, because with every generation, and we're getting more and more, I say, critical in a way. We look at the way the world is now. It's mad. It's a crazy place, and we got these Palantir and all this stuff. It's incredible.
I think that's been an anxiety of certainly of the modern industrial age, hasn't it? This idea that innovation, science, technology, eventually there'll be so few people who understand what we've created and can control it that it will eventually enslave us. And AI is the big fear at the moment, isn't it? And but that makes sense because in this song, I did see it as like you're disgusted with this idea that morality will never be able to keep up with the increase in technology, and we're always behind. And the ethics of it's like, how do we ever catch up? Is that an angle
It's
that you're
it's
looking at it?
it's to do with the mindset of the oligarchy who think what they think we are really, and what use we actually have on the planet. And it's this mindset, if they, useless eaters, that old Henry
Yeah.
Kissinger type thing. There's still people like that, you know, and they should be obviously rooted out and made to explain why they think like that, because human beings are human beings. The it's like the difference in music tastes. It's the same with people, but we can at least appreciate, what we have. But I mean, we lived in such a fucked up world, and a lot of it is because I think is the religion, which is at the base of all this bullshit, weaponizing religion, and people being so gullible and to follow it, and to fight for it, as if it's some kind of cause. Then you got the financial and political class, which, government shouldn't have politicians in them. They just destroy the credibility of it straight away. Every time they open their mouth, So get rid of politicians, they're no good. They're no help, They just make it worse, So it's this idea, isn't it, where, I mean, the British Parliament, look at that. Do you remember David Cameron? Do you remember the way he spoke? And then there was
Under the
Boris.
coalition government, yeah.
Yeah, and Boris speaking like Winston Churchill, and they're like Japanese hideouts, he didn't get told the war would finish, the British Empire's over, get over it, And you look at these personalities like Piers Morgan and these characters, and you think that they're not that far. They're actually closer to the eugenics movement and all that than because they do see a difference. They do. They don't see humanity equal.
That's another thing, isn't it? Especially in England, United Kingdom, we are jaded, we are cynical, aren't we, about even
Yeah,
though we are sovereign electors and vote people in, the
yeah,
talent pool is so small now, isn't it? There's hardly any, there's nobody. Certainly in modern British politics, you would say potential statesman or stateswoman.
yeah,
The
yeah.
standard is just it's low, isn't it?
It's the same rhetoric. It's the same problem that we've got here in
Yeah,
our
rhetoric's the thing. Yeah.
it's I don't know. I think it's why our direction, the way our gaze is looking at that. Other shit's going on. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only explanation for this. There couldn't be any other reason for this idiocy. Look how with like the skirmish with Iran and Israel and America last weekend, and how we were just getting a little bit of focus on the people starving in Gaza. Oh, let's quickly get it back off, because it's very difficult, when different there's different forces, isn't there? There's different forces, and but a lot of it is, like I say, it's there's those who think they should rule us, and it's always been the way. I'm rabbiting. Give me another question, please.
No, you're right. No, it's interesting to know because I know that the themes on this album, what we're discussing now, really do come through. But yeah, I did want to touch upon the 1995 album Black Faith, which I've got to say is my favorite in the discography. I
Yes.
think it's such a well-produced album. So rather than ask what regrets you have about Black Faith, I'm going to rephrase the question. Why should you have any regrets about Black Faith?
Um, well, the band had pretty much split up within a year after that. We were, we were, we were. I was a bit naive, to be honest, to get involved with what we got involved with. At the end of the day, I still like the album. We don't play many of the songs live now. You know, the problem is when I go and play festivals, they want to hear Death Shall Rise, don't they, or something like that. And but it's a good album. I don't have any musical regrets about it, and I think it was the best we could do at the time.
Why did you decide, so you've signed with East West Records, which was a part of which major label was it? Was it not Sony?
Warner,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Why did you use that opportunity for this radical change of direction?
Well, I mean, it was we were kind of going along with the scene at the time. Really, many other bands were branching out, and my bands like Soulfly were getting, popular. And I mean, you mentioned Prong
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and it was actually this music was actually played on the TV on MTV on Vanessa's program, so. We wanted to be a part of it, I think, and try and you want to get getting a record done is okay. But at the time in the 90s, getting your record in HMV was another thing. And to do that, you've got to get onto a distribution lane. Good distributor, a major record label will, make sure that you're given that opportunity. Plus, they give you money to record in very luxurious studios, which was what we wanted to do as well. So we recorded it at Great Linford Manor in Milton Keynes. It was actually the Pete Winkleman, who used to run Bronze Records.
Oh, yes.
Bronze Records with the ape turning into an intellectual on the
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, Motorhead were on Bronze Records, but yeah, we got to record Black Faith with I think it was the Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd analog desk, yeah, with the big, valve amplifiers, big speakers. I mean, they had a technician who'd come in and clean it and get it all ready for the recording. And there was like 3 live rooms. It's like snooker table, yeah, tennis courts, yeah, wonderful, lovely. And we got to go to the Marshall, because in Bletchley, which is just down the road, you got the Marshall Company, so we went down there and we could try out their equipment as well. So yeah, it was the first time we'd gone from like an independent record label, it was like smaller studios, Morris Sound Studios, this type of thing, where you got to keep the budget, $10,000, whatever, and to go into this. And we only recorded at Great Linford Manor. We didn't mix it there. No, we took it to Britannia Row Studios in Islington, near Islington in London. Nick Mason's studio, where you got the old, well, they're not there now, but you had the old flats where the Pink Floyd Another Brick in the Wall video was filmed. So yeah, it was nostalgic at the time. It was very nostalgic, all this. We really did. It was a champagne and a cigar treatment, But I've noticed with Black Faith, and I played Barcelos in Portugal last year with it was Terrorizer.
Wow. Yeah.
David Vincent and his band Terrorizer were playing, and it was usually the thing where you get the bunch of records and you don't see that one with the white and the different logo. You don't usually see that. You see To the Gory End,
Yeah.
Death Shall Rise, The Sins of Mankind, and all of a sudden it goes over to Shadow Gripped and Ball Cutter.
Yeah. This is out Black Faith and Spirit in Flames, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I signed some Spirit in Flames albums in China, which I thought was probably the most where I've signed the most Spirit in Flames albums. But in Barracellas, the production manager, he came out to see me and shake me hand. He says, "You couldn't sign me record, could you? It was Black Faith." It's like, haven't you got any of the others? No, this is the one I like,
Yeah.
So it's funny that where some people like that album, but they're not really bothered about the others. And the hardcore death metalers, they look at it as a blasphemous, release. Yeah.
I like The Sins of Mankind, the one that preceded it, the 93 album. Like
Yeah.
out of the death metal trilogy at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's such a divisive album, Blackface. That's what interested me. And I remember doing for Screen Blast Repeat, I did an article called In Defense of this album and reviewed it retrospectively. And that's where I got in contact with Ian Buchanan and interviewed him for it as well. So I just want to, here's a fun question for you. When and where was the last time you saw the Black Faith CD on sale somewhere? Have you come across it like in the last 10 years?
Yes. It was in I think it was Tower Records. I saw it in the bargain bin for a fiver. Yeah.
How was that for you when you see your record in there? Surely you just transported back to the manor.
Well, when you see it in the bargain basket, you're like, oh. Be nice to see it like for a bit more money, but yeah, I don't see it very often now, I think somebody should re-release it on picture disc,
Yeah.
with the face.
I'm guessing the problem there would be you don't own the rights to it, do you? Because it was on a major label.
Yeah.
There's no chance really of that happening, is it? They're not, I don't know how you even get out of something signed in perpetuity, is it? That's what they're like, aren't they?
Yeah. When we signed it, we had to go through a lawyer. And I remember the lawyer because his name was Alexis Grower. And he worked with Killing Joke. He had to meet Jazz Coleman. And Jazz Coleman took him they went to a pub. And he said, well, do you want to drink then? He said, yeah, do you want a whiskey and Coke? And Coleman went to the bar and got some Cokes and then got his hip flask out to put the whiskey in. Landlord saw them, chucked them both out. Now, Alexis Grower's a suit-wearing lawyer, very, very proper attire and everything. And that was the story that he told me. So, but yeah, it's all tied in with law and the money.
Why do you think it split the band? Signing to a major. Did they
God.
drop you immediately or something, or what? What was the issue?
Major record labels aren't interested in a scene. They're not interested in. They're only interested in you selling a certain amount of records, and I don't know. In a way, like I say, the good points. You get to go to a good studio. You get to, you have to a bit more than a few weeks to record. You got a lot longer, and you can, get other instruments and give you the best opportunity to record. But once they've got the record, once they've got it, you've got to do what they say. You can't do any, in the contract we were in, we weren't even allowed to join any other bands, or do anything. It was a very strange situation. So to get out of the contract, we had to split up, basically. And we didn't feel like doing it because within a year, after splitting within a year, I was traveling around India. I wasn't even, I'd forgotten all of it, trying to forget about it. But it was it was going from an independent record label like Vinyl Solution, where it's a bit more. They had a couple of French guys in there who ran the operation, but there was Rob Tennants, who was the A&R man. He kind of looked after us, and helped us along the way. Then we got into with this major record label. We went through 2 lots of management, 2 lots of management, and then we were actually, before we split up, we were actually being kind of looked after by Abaddon from Venom.
From Venom, yeah.
Abaddon was looking after. He came down to Telford and bought us some drinks, and kind of heard the sob story, really, But great guy, great guy, Abaddon, Tony Cook.
Legend. Yeah.
Yeah, he had snakeskin boots on. You can't argue with that. He's Venom.
Venom, and he's wearing snakeskin boots.
Yeah, he had Nuki Browns with a Jack Daniels check. I mean, I don't know how they drove back to Newcastle, but really nice guys. Really nice guys. I actually met him at the East West offices, and I'm a Venom child, if you know what I mean. I heard about the radio, and I said, I had every picture disc of you. And he gave me a little bit of a hug. He says, "You'll get over it, kid." But yeah, it was an interesting time, the Black Faith, but I paid the consequences after.
Yeah.
So.
I just think the production on it is superb. I'm guessing it's just before Pro Tools, isn't it? So it's not digital, is it?
Yeah, it's all analog.
It sounds digital. The technology is so good.
Yeah. Big thick tape. It was that 2.5-inch tape. A couple of I think we spent 2 weeks doing the vocals.
Well, that's it. It's a big departure in vocals, isn't it? There's not as much of what we would now call traditional death metal voice, and that it's like a spikier punk edge to it.
Yeah, we were listening to more stuff like Rollins at the time, and and this type of thing, and tried to give it a bit of an attitude. But I mean, it was more, with a band. It was a band effort with the producer Simon Effamy. He got involved with the lyrics quite heavily, and the vocals, So I was basically doing what he wanted me to do, really, So.
It worked out. I know that it's divisive. To me, I think it's such an underrated album. What I think the fans will want to know this, you've probably answered it. Which is your favorite Cancer LP from that 1990 to 1995 era?
Yeah, it depends on the day.
Exactly, but
it depends
today. Then, what is it?
It depends. I would say the best Cancer album is going to be the next one. But I mean, the previous one's my favourite at the moment because it's up to date and stuff like that. But going back to that time, obviously, To the Gory End, it's got your first album. Come on, it's your first album. I've got that with a splatter picture, with a splatter version that Peaceville have brought out. So I'm very fond of that. I kind of listen to Death Shall Rise when I have to learn the songs to play live. The Sins of Mankind, it's a bit more of a that's my tribute to German thrash movement. You know that, where because I
Creator and
Sodom. Yeah, we loved all that as well. And so I mean, they've all got like their good points. The thing is, I mean, like people talk about the difference between, say, like Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. And I've heard people like discuss this at length. And me and Ian Buchanan actually went to see Metallica on the Master of Puppets tour with James Hetfield with his plaster cast on, because he had apparently the alleged skateboard accident. So I think it was John Marshall playing guitar, and they played Welcome Home Sanitarium. And I'll always remember that song because a few days later, Cliff Burton had died. And I was like, I remember watching him. He had a stage presence of his own.
Yeah,
like, man, he died. This is And obviously, when I listen to it now, listen to that album now, I listen to Welcome Home Santana, I'm brought back to that gig and seeing him with his Misfits tattoo and his windmill,
Yeah.
him banging, and the way he played his bass, his flares, and so it's those type of things that I remember with music. So I associate history. So obviously, when it comes to the Cancer discography, it's about the experience, and with each album, there's a specific experience. So, like the first album with Scott Burns in this out in the middle of nowhere, where Christ lost his nails in Wales, where there's hunting going on and this type of thing. So we did to the going 4 days recording, 4 days recording. So, and Scott Burns, first time I'd ever worked with a producer, never mind an American producer. I mean, we'd worked with people in the pits, which was Stevie Young, guitarist in AC/DC now, and Mick Hughes. And then we worked with Scott Burns. And then the second album, we went over to Florida to do Death by Ice. And of course, that's going to have a completely different set of experiences to, the land of Wales. So, and that, some really interesting. So when I think of Hung, Drawn and Quartered, I think of when Glenn, he turned up super early to do his vocals for that. He had a bit of a smoke and he came in and we did it together in one take, and then he left. He's really old, an old friend of mine. And so I remember that. I remember him doing his vocals, and he's got his little smile when he does the high pitched, Benton, and he gave me a masterclass in vocals actually, just doing the backing vocals, like,
Yeah, they released an album last year, didn't they? Deicide.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. We played with them actually. We played them in Metal Mexico. And I went to the bar and had a session with him, with Steve and Glenn, talking about the tour we did with them, in '92, because we did a 6-week tour together. And so we were talking about that and drinking. And I missed his show because he was playing like something like 2:00 in the morning, and I was like jet lagged from I played the previous night before, and so I missed his show. So anyway, we saw them again at the festival in Illinois, Full Terror Assault. Assault. And we played, and I had an hour or so to kind of have a couple of shots of bourbon and a smoke. And I went round. I watched them from the front, Deicide, and what I saw was amazing. There's these guys that just transcend into this sound, this barrage of sound that just assaults you morally as well as in your hearing. It's fantastic. Glenn's just like, he's at the top of his game at the moment. He really is. The way he's, his contempt that he has played, it's just fantastic. And I saw him after he played, and he goes, "What did you think then, John?" I was like, "It was brilliant. It was totally satanic." He was like, "What?" It was fantastic, Glenn. Your vocals are as maniacal as ever. And I saw that little grin again that I saw 30 years earlier in the Morris Sound Studios. But yeah, great guys. Deicide.
2 more questions then. One of them relates to that era. James Murphy. How often do you keep in contact with him?
Yeah, I keep in. I know about him through talking to other musicians and interviewing with other people. So I did an interview with the Talking Bollocks podcast with the fella from Acid Rain, and he said he was talking to James Murphy quite a lot. I sent him the reissue of Death Shall Rise, the Peaceful one, But yeah. I like James, He's all right. I don't keep in contact with him as much as I should, But I do like James. I got fond memories, of him. Good times, yeah.
Did you think he was always going to be in just for one album, or when he joined in '91?
He was. God, where's the tissue? He says, "This is the bit. This is the bit with Death Shall Rise. When I play Death Shall Rise, this was the great lesson I learned. Death Shall Rise. I turned up there with my Washburn guitar, and it wasn't good enough, so I had to use a Charvel that Scott had used, the in-house guitar, the Morris sound guitar. So I was using that to play the rhythms." And then when it came, and my Washburn, he took it to a music shop to have an EMG pickup put in it. He says, "You need an EMG, you get the game that way, It's techno tour, it's musical." Robert knows about this stuff. I don't know anything about equipment, but I didn't know my guitar wasn't good enough. And then when I came to doing the leads, I got this kind of, my attitude back then to doing leads was more of a statement of disgust rather than a virtuoso, self-indulgent set of scales and arpeggios. So we used to call them the cat strangling leads. If you can imagine a cat being strangled, which is pretty. I love cats, by the way. I've got 5. Yeah. So cat strangling lead to hear that's the sound, and horse neighing with the whammy bar, this type of thing. This is what I was kind of into, this type of thing. But
Kerry King type solos.
Well, yeah, even more dissonant, even more out there.
More like Tom G. Warrior, who we know can't play the lead guitar, but it sounds awesome, doesn't it, when he's trying to do it on like to Megatherion? He's just fucking making it up.
Yeah, well, I mean, his leads actually suit those riffs perfectly. They suit them. And, he's a big fan of. I'm a big fan of his leads. Actually, I shouldn't say he's a big fan of mine because he probably doesn't know, but I'm a big fan of his leads. So, but yeah, I mean, that was my take on it, and it was based on improvisation there and then. So I was using this borrowed guitar. Everybody was looking, I was like, the same time as Synchronicity had it, Obituary had finished with James, and they'd got their old guitarist back in, Adam, and James he came in to do 2 guest leads, and of course you're going to compare. It was like, oh, okay. So he ended up playing all the leads on the album, and and I just felt kind of gutted. So that was it, really. That was the end of my leads for a while. I did 2 on the Sins of Mankind. So I did 2 leads, kind of like split leads with Barry, to try and make the effort. But I didn't show. I was kind of put off, I was kind of hurt a bit, injured by it, and I was kind of put off. And then Carl Stokes made me play in his Black Sabbath covers band. We did a Black Sabbath covers band. I had to learn Tony Iommi's leads. And with that, I actually was able to kind of figure out some scales and actually learn to play properly a bit. And but then I wouldn't play any leads until the Shadow Gripped album. No, Spirit in Flames. I did a lead on that. I did a lead on the Oil song.
I think you've always been a rhythm, really like Tommy Victor from Prong.
Yeah.
When he plays a solo, it's chaotic. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because he isn't like Marty Friedman or anyone like that. He's just doing what he thinks suits the song.
Yeah.
And that's
it's a spontaneous thing, And I think that you have to approach that when you're like a vocalist and a guitarist. Everything worked out. You're gonna be dreading it, aren't you? When you play it live. So yeah, it is. It's quite a game, But with the rhythm guitar and vocals, which is kind of like where my strengths are, in a way, saying goodbye to the leads for a few years was kind of a good thing, really, because it was instead of a jack of all trades, master of none, I wouldn't master the rhythm guitar or the vocals, to a very high level, but to a level that's, which is appropriate, which takes a bit of time.
Definitely. I mean, and my last question, you've talked about some of the tours you did, Dayside, for example. Before I ask this question, just for our viewers, they might not be aware, Meshuggah even supported Cancer, didn't they? On the Black Faith tour, which people will probably not be aware of. And Ian Buchanan could barely remember it when I interviewed him. So my question is, what's your most memorable tour as a member of Cancer over the years, and why?
Okay, most memorable tour. Okay. Uh, Back in the day or from all time?
Yeah, all time. I mean, really, your favorite tour,
Okay.
just the experience, everything
Well,
about it.
I, I, I used to approach after playing for years. I started to approach touring with a little bit of trepidation, with a bit of fear. But we played in Italy a few months ago. It was fantastic. So that's one of my. I mean, the people in Rome when we played, we went to see the Colosseum, and to get in the mindset, and then we delivered a set, and the crowd loved it. They lapped it up. They thought it was fantastic. And to be playing in the heart of the giallo horror film city, the Argento Fulci, culture. I was like so privileged to be there. But apart from that, I would say that going back to that Deicide tour, because it was such a long tour, I can't really forget it. So, it's such a long tour. I remember that within the first week, we're getting okay. In the second week, we got a bit niggly with each other. With the third week, we got even more niggly with each other. By the fourth week, I hated myself. It's like, we're in this van, going along this road forever, and playing shows. But it was you tend to remember the good times, And I remember traveling on Route 66 again with listening to Ian Buchanan's tape of "Wish You Were Here," looking at the road disappearing in the distance, and thinking, "This is just awesome." This is the life. We
Yeah.
live in La Vida with this.
As a musician, that's where you think
Yeah,
it was worth it all to get here. Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I mean, you put into a situation which is it makes acquisition financing look like 2 cents really in a lot of things. It does give you a kind of bit like that kind of perspective of life, and you see it from that point of view. It's wonderful, in that way.
You've definitely, I mean, we could go on for another hour. You've got so many stories. I'm gonna end it here just because we keep it within an hour. But what I want to say to the viewers is album number 7 from Cancer, released on the 25th of April, Inverted World, released via the prestigious Peaceful Records, and it's CD, 12-inch vinyl. Are there any special vinyl editions for the album?
Yeah, there's a purple vinyl in as a special edition to go with the 39 bodies, the purple shroud.
Right.
Yeah, it's the purple shroud. So he did a purple vinyl. He did a great cover, didn't he? The guy at
Yeah,
Peaceful.
remarkable. Yeah. Who
I
is
mean, you
the
got to
artist? Sorry, who's the artist that did the cover? Because they did The Sins of Mankind, obviously, didn't they?
it's you mean
So sorry, I'm talking about the artwork for Inverted World. Yeah.
the inverted words done by Paul from Peaceville.
Is it? What, the artwork?
Yeah, Paul did
Is
it.
it not the same? Oh, I thought it was. So is it not the same person who did the 1993 album?
No,
Ah,
no.
okay.
We had a long discussion. Me and Paul did. He said, "Hey, what?" In his accent, "Hey, what do you want then?" And I talked about the concept of the album, and I said, "Is there any way we can, with the artwork, um, connect that thing on the Sins of Mankind, that Aztec pyramid
Yeah.
design, with the guy with. I noticed that he's done the cancer dude with the World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab robe, hasn't he? It's like, you know, these like strange robes these globalist, demonic arseholes wear, and he's you know, so he's done that on the pyramid with the guillotine, and the guillotine's got there's a guillotine on the oil EP actually. Yes. So yeah, it was a we had a long discussion, but when he sent me the it's like the first rough sketch, I was like, bloody hell, just use that. And he's like, oh. And a few months later, he'd finished it. It was like, that's nice. You know?
Yeah, it's great.
Should do some posters.
Yeah, you should do. It really stands out, doesn't it? But yeah, it always takes me back to the '93 album. I just assumed it was the same artist.
Yeah.
So
No,
that guy's got some talent.
Yeah, it's to connect it because with a different lineup, you know, still cancer, still sounds like cancer. So, but it's a different lineup. I wanted to make sure that the logo deserved its place. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that you don't really read reviews, and I understand that. Like you said, why second guess yourself and be thinking about what do the fans or reviewers want, as long as it makes sense to you. The reviews have been exceptionally positive, though, for this album. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Well, I just wrote it, you know, and I've had some pretty good feedback, you know, some good feedback. So, you know, I'm happy with it as a songwriter, you know, and that's the way I go. The problem is with reviews. The reviews are for the people to check it out, you know, and you know, the job that you do is so important in that respect because it's, you know, you create the scene with that. It's so important. But my job is to make the music. And that's it. If I just do that, if I get embroiled in, you know, people give me 1 out of 10 and some people give me 10 out of 10. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to continue doing it for me. So I just try and deliver a cancer album. So, but, you know, I'm very, very grateful for the you know, for the good reviews. You know, don't get me wrong.
And I'm grateful as well that you've joined us for this interview. Go out and buy this album. I certainly recommend it. I am a bit tired of modern death metal. So when I heard this album, it restored a bit of faith. It's not just old school. There are a few prog elements in there, very technical from a rhythmic point of view, even elements of like neo-industrial, Killing Joke, Celtic Frost, Creator, all these great bands. So yeah.
Yeah, I've got enough hands. I wish I was a Hindu god. I could give you more thumbs up. But I'll tell you, what you've said about the Killing Joke, because I love Killing Joke, Skinny Puppy, Godflesh, all that stuff, because for me that was a follow-on from death metal.
Yeah.
Skinny Puppy came out, you know, they used to take like special effects of gore films, you know, imagery on stage with them, you know, so that a lot of that was very much of an influence as well. And it's going back to the lyrics of the album about, you know, criticizing the orders of society. It needs to be done. It needs to be done, man. You know. So, you know, but yours has been I think the best review actually, because of like you said, like what you said about the Killing Joke.
You know? Thank you.
You're over the target.
It's an honor. Well, thank you very much, John, for joining us. And yeah, hopefully we'll be here in 2-3 years' time talking about another album. It sounds like you're on a roll now. So yeah. Wish you all the best.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you.